Good afternoon and welcome to this second panel discussion of the day. We've had the context set very well by the Defense Secretary, who's spoken of reforms. We're going to talk of the changing status quo and of vitalizing defense reforms. That's exactly what the Defense Secretary spoke about. And you heard him speak about wanting to make India a defense, technical, and industrial powerhouse. You also heard him talk about the weaponization of tariffs. And in fact, we live in a world where uh, not just tariffs, but even more the weaponization of weapon systems. Because while tariffs is an introduction of geopolitics into trade, the geopolitics into weapon systems is even deeper when countries try to friendshore weaponry and all kinds of sanctions can come in even during the course of conflict. We also heard him speak of the multiplier effect of expenditure on defense, and that is speaking to the goal of the Viksit Bharat, of the developed India by 2047. We heard that in the morning, of the goal of a $30 trillion plus economy, $18,000 plus per capita income. And as we go to that destination, we would certainly need to have much greater indigenization of our defense capacities and to deploy that multiplier. So if we take a quick look at India's rise, for years it's been accompanied by a tag of India being the world's largest arms importer. So, in other words, a power that was dependent on foreign arms for its defense. And the defense secretary referred to the quiet revolution that is now ongoing, which is unfolding in the defense sector, from record high domestic production to soaring defense exports. What India is doing is redefining the defense sector in many ways. The question now is whether India can sustain this momentum, join the ranks of the world's major defense manufacturers. Uh, India already has the fourth largest defense budget, upwards of 90 billion US dollars in 2024-25. And there is a strategic imperative, therefore, of self reliance to build that substantial defense industrial base, which becomes the base for the larger economy, which will become soon the third largest economy, and be competing with the top three economies in the world in the next decades. Last year, India's defense production was over $17 billion. More than 65% of Indian defense equipment is now produced domestically. And that, yeah, if you recall, would used to be the other way around. We used to import most of the equipment and produce very little domestically. Defense exports have been rising. We've been hearing that from the defense secretary as well. There is a very ambitious target of 50,000 crore rupees by 2029. That's $5 billion. So there is a very high ambition in the defense reform program. India's the chance to leverage its cost advantages, its growing private sector base, expand the global partnerships, and build a very powerful defense industry. But just ambition and words alone will not suffice. There has to be a roadmap. There has to be very concrete things that India does. And in that sense, India's defense reforms have entered a decisive kind of era. We are seeing structural transformation, institutional realignment, the emergence of defense as a strategic driver of foreign policy, which means the idea is going beyond the Ministry of Defense and all of government on this objective. So, this is the context for this session's theme, which is changing the status quo, vitalizing defense reforms. And what we recognize through this ambition is that incremental improvements are no longer sufficient. What we would need is we have disruptive technology, We have contested borders. We have a shifting military ecosystem. And the defense secretary spoke of volatility, geopolitical volatility, and as it intensifies, it impacts all theaters. We have the NATO influx, we have Europe's rearmament cycles going on, we have the militarization going on in the Indo Pacific. And so we need to see defense reforms in this frame within the broader strategic recalibration of India's security policy, India's foreign policy, and indeed India's domestic industrial policies. So the reforms are not just adjustments, but they are strategic instruments. They are going to be used for not just for operational readiness, for exports, for domestic innovation, for capacity building, but for defining the India story in the next few decades. So, to unpack all these ideas, we have today a stellar panel with both a global and a domestic view on all these issues. We have Dr. Adrian Hack, who's director of the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung of Germany, but he's the regional director based in Delhi. We have Sri Baba Kalyani, managing director of Bharat Forge. And we have, as a last minute addition, Ms. Prabha Goel, executive director of BEL. So thank you for coming in, and thank you for preventing this panel from becoming a manel and getting our gender balancing right. So thank you all for joining us. And let me start with you, Dr. Adrian Hack. What's the global view on future warfare? What is Europe's view of the renewed defense ecosystem with the conflict in Europe, and perhaps also tell us about the German view in the new NATO realignment? How long should 5 to 7 minutes in the beginning, and then we'll get into a conversation.
Okay, that's a long time for an answer. First of all, thank you very much for having me. It's a great pleasure. I really mean it. I'm a small consultant among two of the most advanced defense companies in India and also the world. And let me start with a thesis to your question. I would say the trend we see is prepare for war, reduce your forces. But I don't mean absolute numbers. This is up to the politicians to decide. But the amount of soldiers I need for X, Y, Z, because this is the benchmark of automatization we are facing. And tactics, platforms, and systems that have the goal to reduce human resources will be the future. And vice versa, those who rely on their numbers, their size, and mass recruitment, they are in the risk to throw their advantage and their capacity into the battlefields of tomorrow, and they will slowly bleed out because innovation is actually required. And look at Ukraine, it's a perfect example. We have to keep in mind the Russian economy is approximately 9.25 bigger than the Ukrainian one. We talk about the relationship of India and Bangladesh. Since December 2022, they captured 1.1% of Ukraine territory, and at the same time have tremendous casualties. Now there are different numbers in place when it comes to death. There are numbers among 150,000, 250,000. We have a very low rate of those casualties who come back to the front lines. So we in Germany estimate that there are between 300 and 400,000 Russian veterans disabled. And look just at examples like Avdiivka, a city with 30,000 inhabitants, was attacked by a force 3 times of the size. And only there we have 13,000 plus dead Russian soldiers. And the entire way from Avdiivka to Prokofsk, where we are talking right now, is the way from Faridabad to Gurgaon. And on this way, you have approximately 400 Russian tanks lying. And we estimate this was their annual production before the war. It might be higher now. And in addition to these 400, you have another 700 armed vehicles, visually confirmed. And even though they have an impressive industrial production and big stocks back from the times of Soviet Union, they cannot, keep track with the losses. And they end up fighting in Chinese golf carts. And there again, the argumentation becomes a circle, because this, of course, increases your casualties again. And we have the perfect example on the other side in Ukraine, because they are forced to fight with less stuff, because they're obviously way smaller. And obviously they are in defense, yeah. So they are. I don't see right now a dynamic where they will have a counter movement, but they are more or less able to defend their lines with way smaller amount of soldiers. Drones play a major part in it, that's for sure. But let's keep in mind, before this war became a drone war, it was an artillery war. And many analysts predicted that this will be the time when Russia will have a breakthrough, because they had way more fire units and they had 10 times the amount of shells. But these were the questions of the past. Because the questions of the future, and this is where we come to the trends, is what is the effective range of my artillery? How many shots do I need? Does the gunner need to hit a moving target in 14 kilometers distance? Can my artillery move while it's firing? We don't ask anymore, how quick can I move from one position to the other? Do I have an effective ground radar? Is my ground radar digitally connected to the fire units? Does the shell itself is able to maneuver? Does it has GPS, or is it just an exploding tin? And these are the questions, for the future warfare that make the difference in the end. And I see pretty much the shift now, that we come from the old way of thinking, counting units, counting ammunition, counting soldiers, to the real question of modern warfare. So my answer would be less steel, more sensors. Less soldiers, but more specialized soldiers. Less military, more industry. And those who miss this trend, they will have no chance in the battlefields of the future. And when we talk about land war, this is, I would say, the last dimension, even though they're interdependent, but this is the last dimension where this development will hit ultimately. If you look at the Navy, it is already there. We've seen a tremendous reduce of staff, and at the same time a tremendous increase of automatization at Navy forces, and we will have this development very strongly in the land warfare in the future. And Ukraine is only the first showcase. I predict every other case where modern armies face each other will increase in that trend.
So let me drill down a little more with you on, you've talked of the future of warfare, less military, more industry. That's a point well taken. But now, given the transatlantic reality being redefined and the US sort of retreating from NATO and the Europeans stepping up, Germany has seen a huge surge in at least in ambition in terms of the percentage of GDP that will go into defense. So what kind of defense reforms is Germany and Europe looking at? Is it comparable to what India is doing?
Yeah, I mean, Germany is a perfect example because we have major reforms, but we don't do everything right. So I don't see a German officer in the room. Good. So no, I mean, on the one hand, so it was a political decision to go back to general conscription in Germany, which is a tremendous administrative project, completely useless. This is my point. The Russians will not take notice of it. On the other hand, the German industry really jumped on this trend. We see huge developments, and I give you just a few examples. Germany had no armed drones at all. And now we have a huge amount of autonomous AI loitering munition placed in Ukraine. We are developing right now the first full autonomous fighter jet, which will have a pilot, an AI pilot with 30 years of experience. And trust me, if it's rather the US or us who will do it first. And also in the maritime domain, you have the US Zumwalt class, for example, a ship with 15,500 tons displacement and 150 crew members. And Germany is now constructing a vessel with 11,000 tons displacement and the same amount of crew members. So we are not there yet, but technically we are getting there yet. Still, the US industry is, of course, the benchmark. But the first part of your question, when it comes to NATO and everything, I would say there is a lot of rumor. The Europeans are forced to stand up by their American ally, and they do, obviously. But the US is not leaving NATO, and at the same time also not leaving the European theater. With all the rumor you have, one has to say since 1945, no, for us since 1955, they are a very reliable ally, and still their military capacity and also their industrial innovation is so impressive. I think the next coming decades, they will be the benchmark.
Okay, thank you. Good to hear this German vote of confidence in the United States. It's looked at a little differently in India currently, but let's go ahead to you, Baba Kalyaniji. So, how do you look at this whole story of Swadeshikaran, say Sashaktikaran, empowering defense production and innovations, from your vantage on one of the most important defense industry companies in India?
Well, thank you very much, Ambassador, and thank you for the Claus organization for inviting me here. Really appreciate. Ladies and gentlemen, senior officers from the armed forces, diplomats, and friends. You know, I was here in the Manekshaw Center on the 17th of October. That was just last month at the Claus Republic TV event, a similar event that was organized. And during my address to them, I talked about a seminar held in 2016 at the same event at Manekshaw Center, when General Suhag was the Chief of Army Staff, and the late Manohar Parrikar was then the Defense Minister. And you heard the Defense Secretary talk about reforms. At that seminar, I showed a movie about how I got my gun tested in a test range in the United States, because I was not allowed to test my gun in the Army test ranges here. 2 weeks later, the reform took place, and we were allowed to test our guns in the Indian test ranges. The effect of these reforms is 10 years later, this is 2016, we are in 2025, 9 years later, we have developed the most advanced artillery gun designed by DRDO and built by us. We have another industry partner who builds also, which is Tata on the other side. And as you heard from Dr. Huck, I pronounced you right? Yes. Most important thing in artillery gun is range and accuracy. Our gun fires 48 kilometers. And the accuracy is exactly I don't know how to call it, double or half of existing guns. And more than that, it's software controlled, so you can put a little bird on it, and you fire the first shot. If you know where the shot is landed with that bird, it can automatically give a signal to the gun and correct the gun by itself. It is that automated and autonomous. And it can run 18 guns autonomously. So this is technology. And this is technology that is fully developed in India. The IP is Indian, and we produce it. Matter of fact, before you got the order from the Army, we exported these guns to Europe. So that reform, that one single reform, created and artillery capability in India. And in a company like us, who exported about 85 to 100 guns in the last 2 years to Europe. So that's just to talk about reforms. Couple of things I want to say here. I think, we misunderstand where we are as a country when we compare ourselves with Germany or the United States or the Western nations. Innovation is a buzzword in India, but it's not understood. When you innovate something, it's a new product. Especially if you are innovating something for the armed forces, you're not going to have 10 people innovating the same thing. You're going to have probably one guy who's innovating it. And there is no process in the army or in the procurement process that if there is only one person or one company doing it, you can single tender and buy it. And that's one major reform that is required to grow innovation in India. Because without innovation, in Germany, they don't have to tender because there are 3 companies who produce things. It's Rheinmetall who produces guns and tanks, KF Krauss-Maffei, KMD, who's another company, and then there are some electronic companies that do the electronic stuff. So the process is very different. It's a mature country. They have done their innovations long time ago. Whereas in India, we need to understand what is innovation and we need to understand what is required to foster innovation. So this is one big reform that needs to come in. I was very happy to see a couple of weeks ago that one of my good friends who is head of Zoho, which is a company, I think you have Dr. Vijay Raghavan here, he knows Zoho very well. We have discussed this many times in the PM Strike meeting. Now, Zoho's system has been adopted by the government of India, including the Ministry of Defense, for their communication software. Now, this is one company. Now, if you can adopt one company's system, a complex system like that for communication, in the Ministry of Defense, in the government of India, I cannot understand why can you not take new innovations by companies, not only me, many companies who are struggling to find a market for their product when those products are required. So this is just one point I'd like to make. The second point is that, whenever you want to make a product, the Defense Secretary talked about AMCA, talked about having a consortium to build AMCA, talked about MALE UAVs, which is medium altitude, long range UAVs. We are part of both those programs, at least bidding for both those programs. But I want to just make one thing understood. These are programs where there is a lot of technology, there is a lot of science, and if it is not well understood, and if we just look at it from a peripheral point of view, we will always misunderstand it, misjudge it, and then we will not have these products. I'll give you one simple example. You take a jet engine. We've been struggling to make a jet engine for 30 years. I was part of the Kaveri program 30 years ago. I made the turbine discs and turbine blades for Kaveri. And we still haven't made the Kaveri engine. Now it has gone to Safran, and they are going to design the engine and give it back to India. In an engine like that, in a jet engine, there are roughly about 350 technologies that you have to master before you can make a jet engine. There are different kinds of technologies. There are metallurgical technologies, there are forging technologies, casting technologies, there are coating technologies. There are 350 technologies that you have to master. And at least, I would say, 100 different sciences that you have to master. What is the science behind that technology? What makes that technology work? Now, if you don't do that, if you simply say, I want to make a jet engine, you will never make it. That's the same thing with artillery gun. We've been trying to make artillery guns from 1984. We never made it. And now we are exporting artillery guns. I'll give you another example. We are the largest producers of artillery ammunition in the world. In the world, we make 500,000 155 millimeter shells per year, all for export. Even the United States doesn't have this capacity. Okay? So, India has a lot of capability, but I think the root of innovation and how to convert innovation into a product, how to make India into a products nation is just not understood. Simply not understood. And I think I'm glad that the Honorable Prime Minister has created this 1 lakh crore R&D fund for the private sector, only for the private sector. And hopefully there's a disbursement mechanism for that that's going to come out. And the whole idea for that is private sector needs to innovate. I mean, everybody can innovate. It's not just the private sector. It's every public sector can innovate. Everybody can innovate. But India's track record in innovation is very poor. And we need to improve it. We need to improve it dramatically. And the only way you can improve it dramatically is there are a lot of programs which are working well. You have the IDEX program, the Defense Secretary talk about the Aditi program. Yes, they are working reasonably successfully, but they are very small programs. I think we need to get much larger, much bigger, and we need to start respecting innovation and accepting innovation in our products. That's all I'd like to say.
Okay, I'd like to push you a little bit on that very tantalizing thing that you said about the jet engine. You worked on the Kaveri for a long time. That's really the holy grail. So, what would you recommend from now till 3 decades later we should do to be able to produce that jet engine, which we've been working on for 3 decades already?
I think if you create a consortium of 2-3 Indian companies in the private sector, along with DRDO as the person holding your hands, you can make that jet engine in less than 5 to 7 years. You don't need 30 years for that.
Okay, so that's one defense reform we should take note of coming out of this panel. Let me take it to you, Prabha Goyalji. You are with Bharat Electronics Limited, and you are ED for marketing and particularly looking at
Defense
supporting.
market.
Yes, so you're looking at small industries, MSMEs, and startups. So how do you include them in this ecosystem of defense production so that it becomes an approach which goes down to the smallest company?
Yeah. If you look at the current the global scenario, the way the geopolitics have changed, or the wars happening in past few years, we get to know the technology is changing very fast. We get to know how the other countries have their weapons or the equipment being used. At the same time, like Ops Sindhu, we also expose ourselves what we had. So we are known to the world what we have. Looking at all that, there is a need that we also need to change quickly, have something new, which is not known to the world, coming out fast. So, like in the beginning, you rightly said, incremental improvement is not going to work. It is going to be a breakthrough improvement. When we talk of breakthrough, it is not going to come from a single entity like BEL. It has to be whole of nation approach. We have to look for innovator. Could be a single innovator, could be a startup, could be MSME. So looking at our procedures, what we had, we normally used to go on a tender basis, floating tenders, going for L1, and every startup was treated like a vendor only. But the need of R is to tap the talent, technology available and use at the earliest, take advantage of agility and speed of startups, take the ecosystem of MSMEs. We need not manufacture everything at our own, use their support system, handhold them, let them get developed so that we look at the bigger systems and the bigger things. So towards that, lot of reforms in our procedures and policies we have done internally. One, of course, we have this DIO where this IDEX program is there, we are funding into it. Then we have DIA CU is where BEL is also funding into that. lot of academia. We were there, but now that has expanded. We have, like, I'll give one example, IIT Madras we are working with. So there we are the one DPSU, another DPSU, startups, our engineers sitting in IIT Madras. So that is a way of working we have changed altogether. It is not that we are sitting in our office only. So our engineers, a big number of engineers sitting on those locations working with the startups. That is one way of working. Secondly, when it comes to our own procedures, startup engagement, we have come out with a different method. We don't look at them like a vendor. We handhold them and use their technology. We understand them. We know that a startup generally do not know how to do the business. Okay, they are more of a technocrats. So how to tap the technology, how to use them. So we have come out some methods within our organization to use them. Though we have our own central research lab, our own innovation centers, but everything cannot be done at our own and should not be thought of also if there is so much of technology or knowledge base available within the country. So we are tapping all the prime academia in the country. We are tapping startups, using them, making them part of our ecosystem, giving them all facilities what we have. Like we give our infrastructure for testing. We associate our engineers during development process. So development process also we fully get engaged during the, say you have PDR, CDR, design and all those processes. Similarly, during manufacturing process also, testing process also, because many of them do not know the defense product ruggedization level requirement, qualification requirements. It is not known to those industries. So we handhold them from start to end. And we have come out with those procedures very clearly. Similarly, we engage them into the AI also. Like AI is okay, it's as a disruptive technology, it has added to our product portfolio, but we have also learned how to work together for the purpose of having AI. Giving an example, we have got AI incubation center with Army, we have got AI incubation center with the Indian Navy, where we are working with academia, have startups. It is not that Bell working with them. So it is open to startup, it is open to academia, open to MSMEs. So that is an ecosystem what we have built in and come out with a working model where it is open to all and we are open to get any idea which could be implemented with user inputs. Ultimately, the user, we need to know what user needs. So this is how we have evolved our procedures and processes towards looking at that we come out quickly for a product or technology what is required by our customers.
Okay, so I think you've raised the very important technology question, and I'm going to take it to all the members of the panel. But first, with you, when you look at technology, and you're really at the cutting edge in electronics of warfare technology, do you have access to global technologies, or do you need to indigenously develop these technologies that you're going to be using? And what is your way of getting the latest globally and getting it into the BEL system?
Okay, when it comes to, okay, I'll say we know that we don't have all technology available. There are gaps. So many of the programs we have a technology partners, which are the foreign OEMs, but we also know they will not give core of it. Some part of it definitely they'll keep hold onto with them. As a stage one, I'll say if we don't have a product, if we don't have a technology, we have to tie up, have a product with them so that the operational gap is filled. At least the product is available to the user with current guidelines of say ICO 50% or so. And then slowly we increase the indigenization content. So that is one way we are working. Say if I initially started with 50%, then we increase with to 60% or 70%. This kind of engagement we try to have with the foreign OEM that slowly will increase the IC. Parallelly, we also start doing our own development with DRDO, with industry, and with the startups. Because defense technology is a niche area and it has its own capital investment and the gestation time. So it cannot be any product cannot be developed or be available in a very short period of time. To immediately meet the operational requirement, we go with the TOD, with the foreign partner, and parallelly, like there are a lot of DRDO programs, we are working with them. There are a lot of programs even with the for the DRDO program, we are engaged with the startups or the industries or the academia. Until unless we have our own products, our own technology, we cannot have control over it. Even if you buy it once, we cannot sustain it. So that is well understood in the organization. And in fact, 50% of our engineers in R&D. Our R&D expenditure is 6 to 7%, and we are aiming for the 10% investment, 10% of our turnover. So that is how we are aiming for to have more and more indigenous products. In fact, our around 80% turnovers comes from the indigenous technologies. So we are meant for it. We are working towards it.
Excellent. So I think 10% R&D is an
We are
excellent
aiming
benchmark.
for, yeah.
Let me take that question to Kalyani ji. How do you look at technology? How do you look at the technology dilemma that if you get the technology from overseas, it could be coming with strings attached. They could be black box technologies. How do you deal with that? How do you indigenize?
If I get a black box technology from outside, I throw it out and I develop my own technologies. As simple as that. There's nothing called, this whole concept of indigenization, that's a concept of the 80s. It started when Maruti came into India and wanted to make cars, and Government of India, Ministry of Heavy Industries said the indigenization target should be 50% and then increased to 60%. And the result of that is today we have a growing automobile industry and we still don't have the technology to make engines. You look at the army and their tanks, they can't get engines for the tanks. And this is India after 75 years of independence. And this is because of this whole concept of indigenization and percentage indigenization. We don't need indigenization, we need innovation. We need to innovate things. The Germans were making engines 100 years ago. Okay? Mr. Benz, I forget the founder, but if you go to Stuttgart, there is a fantastic museum which shows the origin of the diesel engine. And we, after 75 years of independence, are not able to make a diesel engine, which is also not even Euro 6. I think it's Euro 3 or Euro 4 for the tank. This is our state of affairs. So we have to forget about all this. We have to start innovating, and we have to start innovating in a mission mode. That's what we do in our company. We don't depend on anybody outside for technology. We create our own technologies. And if we can't create the technology, then we don't get into that business. We get into business where we have the power to win, we have the power to create our own technology, and we have the power to create it with our own capabilities.
That's an excellent ambition to have for a company. So you make an important distinction between indigenize and innovate. But at a company level, you may have the choice, but at a national level, you cannot make that choice that if I don't get it from overseas, I won't take it, because you need your aircraft and you need your artillery guns. So what would be your recommendation at a global India level? How should you deal with this dilemma of global technologies?
Obviously, what you don't have, you have to get. That's very clear. But the point is, we have to focus on innovation, not indigenization. That's the point I'm trying to make. Because if you focus on indigenization, it's a very incremental process of creating new technology. If you focus on innovation, it's a very accelerated process of creating new technology and converting India into a products nation rather than being where you are today.
Right. So, Dr. Haque, how do you look at it? Does Germany indigenize or innovate, or are you going to simply, when you go to 5% defense spending of GDP, import American equipment, or are you looking at strong innovation?
Yeah, actually, the defense industry is historically grown since the First World War, you can say. So some of these companies are really that old. So this is not really the question. We only have this, this balance. On the one hand, you want to invest domestically and don't want to be dependent from the outside. On the other hand, you have to prepare for the war case. And this is, of course, a tough question when you face a crossroad where you can say the foreign product is better than what we can deliver right now, or what we can develop. And we are now in a rather pragmatic term. So mainly we are domestically supplying, but we had, for example, one big case, which was the F-35. So the German Tornado was outdated, and in Germany you have approximately you have nuclear weapons from the US stored, and within the NATO framework, German Air Force has to be able to use them. And just constructing a new, and the Eurofighter cannot. So just constructing a new jet just for that, where you just need in the end 30 of them, was impossible. So in the end of the day, you end up with the F-35. And this is a pill you have to swallow in the end of the day. But I think one point Sir mentioned is very interesting. In the end of the day, you have to buy what you don't can produce domestically. Every country has that issue. No one has. Maybe two countries in the world have a full, complete defense industry, and there it's of course the question: where are you allowed to buy it? How reliable is this relationship? And here we have a lot of question marks. I mean, you mentioned the United States. This is, of course, a question: how reliable is the supply with their systems? And also, Germany, in the old government, had an issue with that. You mentioned the tank engines. The engines are there. The company is willing to earn money. There was a leftist government in between that was of the opinion that the world should live in peace and no one should construct new tanks. And unfortunately, it's not humoristic. It was like that. And these things we have to solve. Countries have to have stable partnerships, so that you can say, if we have a partnership and whatever I see in your store, I'm allowed to buy, and there's no discussion on it, and there's no time limit on it. And these relationships, they are existing among a few countries, but I think there is a lot of scale to improve that.
Okay, I also want to ask you about the whole idea of collective security. Now, it was, the foundational idea of NATO collective security. In India, we don't have that experience. But what is your view now of collective security? Would you still be getting all equipment from within the NATO ecosystem? And what would you, or do you feel that a lot of it has to be developed indigenously within Germany?
I mean, the question was not so much on NATO. It was always the issue was always when one country wanted to deliver something to Ukraine, and there was another country in the supply chain which was more restrictive. These were actually the issues we faced. We didn't have that case yet that one NATO country didn't supply to another NATO country, because we have that framework that within NATO you have a free movement of, let's say, military goods, which is necessary to keep this alignment alive, because you also have interoperability as an demand. Yeah? So everything I develop has to be able to. So the tank I develop in France has to fit into the German plane. Yeah? And so this is a given thing. You cannot get out of it, and it is also important for the real warfare. I mean, you have collective security implemented on very practical terms. I mean, when you had the drone incidents in Poland, it was Dutch planes shooting down drones, and you have 5,000 German soldiers and with the most modern tanks placed in Lithuania. And this is, of course, also a technical question, because in case of an attack on the NATO territory, which would be Lithuania in that scenario, the Lithuanian and the German forces, they have to be 100% interoperable, and also bordering nations like Poland and like Estonia, they have to be interoperable. And this also excludes you from a lot of innovation. So if you're a NATO country, even if you would have good relations with Russia, if you want to use a NATO-built stealth jet, you cannot use a Russian air defense system, because your own air defense would need to be able to detect your own plane. So it has pros and cons, but I see the cons are way bigger than the pros are way bigger than the contras.
Okay, so I want to introduce another idea. You referenced the Ukraine war. We have the experience of the Ukraine war, the West Asia war, and this year also Op Sindoor in India, and we've seen the changing nature of warfare, a lot of reliance on drones, air power, also the shift towards multi-domain operations, that integration of land, air, maritime, cyber, space, cognitive domains. So how does that impact reform? Or how is Europe looking at it, or NATO looking at it? And I'll take that same question to my other two colleagues on the panel. Yes, please.
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, we have interconnectivity into this or interdependency in these domains. On the other hand, we have surprisingly a war in Ukraine which is pretty much land-based. So the naval is the naval component, and as well as the real air power is not really into place. But we have a highly digitalized war. Yeah? We see it more and more, and the innovation cycles are huge. So I think one has to be prepared for such warfare in the future. But I don't see Russia here. First of all, I would name China rather than Russia, because first of all, they are learning everything you can learn from that battlefield, and they also have good relationship to your unpleasant neighbor, and they are also pretty much leading in a lot of technologies. And I would say that this is the threat we prepare for. It is whenever this ecosystem starts interconnecting all these domains. So when I think about this kind of warfare, I would rather you are in a worse spot than we are, I'm afraid.
Absolutely. So I would take that question to you, Kalyaniji. Given the experience of recent warfare, and given the fact that multi-domain is a reality, does that change your calculation at the enterprise level in terms of your plans and on what you manufacture?
No, I don't think it changes. I think fundamentally you have to develop all your equipments that you're making, whether it's platform or whether it's equipment, which has to be suitable for multi-domain warfare, the C4, ISR, and all those kind of things. I think the Indian Army already has a protocol for this. It's called the Shakti protocol. Everything has to work as per that protocol, connected to that protocol. So we are pretty much, in that system. You have to have your equipment that is software driven rather than driven by mechanical stuff. So it is fully digital, as he just talked about. So with digital, AI, and connected systems, you can almost do anything. You can get it connected, you can make it autonomous, you can work. So for us who build equipments, that's the mantra, that you have to ensure that your equipment is software driven, it is fully digital, is connected to the protocol of the Indian Army.
Right. How would you look at this?
Okay, looking at the current Ops Sindoor and the net-centric operation, so definitely the importance is understood for multi-domain operation. And Bell being into that domain, and I personally have a lot of experience into C4I systems. Looking at the Air Force, C4I system is developed by BEL, and for the Army and for Navy also to some extent, we have developed those systems. And integration activities under progress. Some integration at some level has been done and it is progressing. That is one level. Also, I'll say over a period of time or over years, we have largely able to integrate legacy equipments, legacy systems, foreign equipments. We have developed that capability and we are very confident we can integrate the systems and we are able to integrate. So that capability exists in country with Bell and with other industry partners too. That's a need of our and need to be done, and we are working towards multi-domain operation with in coordination with headquarter IDS. We have certain engagements, we are progressing on to that. More than that, what I feel you rightly said, the cyber front and the space is further to be discussed, to be integrated. It is very much required because on GPS denial environment, there are many things which are going to be in the future warfare, how it is to be handled. Cyber is a bigger threat, how it is to be handled in a multi-domain operation. Beyond that, I feel we are thinking of today cyber and space. Beyond that, some maybe social networks could be the health system, could be another systems further will require to be integrated. This is how I see the system is going to get evolved. More importantly, we act very fast, sitting with all the three services, understanding their requirement and do it quickly. That is a need for our very well understood during Ops Sindoor. So this is my take. We need to move fast forward into that direction, and coming to further to theater command and all those things are need to be done. And we are fully geared up to handle any kind of interface, integration, cyber security aspects to be handled within the country. The capability exists. When it comes to the security, it is more important that we have our own hardware, secure hardware, where we put our own algorithm, so we are not exposed to the third country. We are not vulnerable. So those are the aspects which are to be taken care while we handle these systems. And if you look at the adversity, they attacked, no, some of the health systems were attacked. So it could be any system which could be hacked, could be disrupted, and which puts whole country into trouble. So holistically, it is all to be seen, and multi-domain, to what extent of domain is to be expanded, to be seen and done. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. So, the last round you also mentioned R&D, and R&D has been a critique not just of our defense ecosystem, but of a larger industrial ecosystem that has been a weakness in terms of producing those innovative companies, both in the private or public sector. So what would you recommend for the larger ecosystem of defense as an R&D kind of initiative in these reforms over the next decades? What can we do better to have more R&D funds available?
Coming to R&D funds, I think there are a lot of opportunities from the government side also too, as part of the IDEX and the Aditi programs. And you have the TDF program of the DRDO and the DIA program of DRDO. So there are a lot of opportunities or the funds availability. I don't think in today the fund is an issue as far as the R&D is concerned. So government is giving a lot of support. It is how quickly we are able to come out with the products, how industry is coming out to support or how I look the bigger industry players. I don't expect the startups or the MSMEs to put a lot of money into R&D, but the private industries, the big private industries also should start putting money into R&D, which they were not putting in the past. They have started. Probably some more investment from those R&D is required. And also we must see the duplicacy in development doesn't happen at a country level. We use the technology. I will say if DRDO is doing some technology, let them do it. We should do something else. Like we also have our own central research lab who are purely into R&D. They are not linked with our production or anything else. They're independent verticals in Bell only onto the R&D. One could be they also join hand with DRDO and see how we complement each other. So everybody has to complement in the current scenario, whether it's a single innovator or a startup. And that way we are very open to work with any one of them.
Okay, I'll take that to you, Kalyaniji. What would be your recommendation for an R&D ecosystem? Because that has been the strong critique of Indian defense industry as well as overall.
First of all, I think we underestimate the capability of our scientists, engineers that work in the R&D organizations of our defense industry, our CSIR labs, or wherever it is. I think there is a lot of competency out there. And at least my personal experience working with many of these labs of DRDO and some labs of CSIR, I've always found things happening rather than not happening. The one big problem in our R&D ecosystem in India is it's largely run by the government. It is very little run by industry. I mean, some of us have our own R&D centers, large R&D centers, BL has, but largely run by the government. And the one big problem that I have personally highlighted to the Honorable Prime Minister many times during the meetings is this whole issue of GFR. You cannot apply GFR to an R&D organization. The moment you apply GFR to an R&D organization, people spend more time in figuring out other things rather than doing research. I think that is the problem with our ecosystem more than anything else.
Yeah, so definitely a process reform. But do you think there's room for a public-private initiative that an R&D fund available equally to the private sector?
Oh yeah, I just mentioned that earlier that the Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister announced a fund of 1 lakh crores of rupees just for the private sector for R&D. The ANRF, which is the Anushandhan Foundation, is going to monitor that through the Ministry of DBT. And the Secretary I just had a meeting just 2 days ago in Pune and in Bombay, where they were explaining how the procedure of the funds being available to industry is going to happen. So I think the process is happening, it's taking place, it will start accelerating, and this process is, the fund is available to the private sector for anywhere between 20 to 50 years with very low interest. It almost means zero interest. So money is never going to be a problem. And it doesn't have GFR. That's the big advantage. So general financial regulations don't apply there.
Excellent. So I'm going to take the R&D question to you, Dr. Hack, on how you deal with it, and then come back for the last, I think we have just 10 minutes left, question on the export issue, the defense export issue to public sectors. But any comments from you on how you deal with the R&D? Because Germany is supposed to be top of the line in both in allocation of resources for R&D and in reaping its fruit.
Yeah, I mean, on India, I cannot recommend anything because I don't know it, and it's maybe also not also good as a foreigner because you know it better domestically. In Germany, the experience is on the one hand that private is usually working better than publicly, let's say, orchestrated, and also that those companies who are mixed companies usually have an advantage, which is true for many defense corporates. And this is also the, let's say, a German tradition. Even Rheinmetall, you mentioned, if they have less contracts in military, they do car spare parts. And I think this is something which keeps an ecosystem constantly on a high research level.
Excellent. So let me take the last question to you. Let's start with BEL. On defense exports, are you going to be contributing to this 50,000 crore number, or
No,
how are you
definitely.
looking at the
Yeah,
exports?
definitely. Export is a push from the government and from within our organization too. And we are participating in a lot of defense exhibitions, also to understand the needs of those countries, engaging with the DAs in respective countries, and the government is being very supportive. We have certain products which are like our Akash missile system, weapon locating radar, which are much in demand and being pushed into. There are many products like we have coastal surveillance system which are export worthy, and a lot of push is there for those programs. And just one anyway, towards that, recently this month only we had one inauguration, DPSU Bhavan, inaugurated by Raksha Mantri. The idea was any foreign delegates coming to India, you need not go to different DPSUs. So all 16 DPSUs have come under one umbrella. We are showcasing our capabilities at single-handedly at one place. So foreign delegates come there, so we engage with with those people in that area. So idea is to have more and more engagement and push our products to the friendly nations and customizing according to their requirement. Some countries we are starting on the kind of a joint development, because there are certain countries who are looking for, like we have a make in India, they also have a make in into their own countries. So we are being supportive to those ideas also, hand holding of some local industry partner who could do a local manufacturing. So all possible avenues we are working out. If they want to make in their country, please do that. We are there. We are trying to engage with some startup in foreign countries too. If the technology is available and it helps us, so we are working through the government to engage with those startups also. So there is enough of push from our side also to have maximize export.
Right. And Kalyani ji, to you, we know of the success of the BrahMos exports. But from the point of view of Bharat Forge and from the point of view of the larger ecosystem, what do you think should be the pathway of this export program that we have?
I think first of all, I must thank the government, the Honorable Defense Minister, and in our case, the armed forces for helping us connect with different countries for export. Out of our total defense turnover today, 85% of it is export. So it's close to 2,000 crores of exports. Okay. And I think this is only going to go up. Of course, as we start executing the domestic orders for ATAGs and for carbines and for other things, the domestic production will also go up. But we see a large demand. We are actually working very hard in Europe. We're working very hard in the United States. That's one market we want to crack. And we have found that I think we have products in many cases that are better than what are made in the US. And we're getting a lot of interest from there. People are coming, visiting us. But exporting defense products anywhere is a very long process. There are country permissions, there are export permissions, there are import permissions, there are all kinds of things. There is testing, there is validation. So it's a long process. But once you get in, then it can be a fairly large business. And that's what we are working on. Our target is that at any point in time, we should have roughly about 30-40% of our total defense business as exports. And we are strategically working in the developed world. We are strategically working in countries like Indonesia, Philippines, Cambodia, in the African countries. and many of these areas. And as we increase our product range, we are now making a lot of unmanned systems. We make unmanned systems for the Navy, we make drones, we make UAVs, we make all kinds of these stuffs. Slowly, we will get into things like radars, radar control systems, and high-end electronics. I think our exports will become even much larger.
Right. So, on that note, thank you very much. Let me bring this panel to an end, give you extra 5 minutes for the tea. I would just summarize in one sentence to say that I see a great deal of confidence in the India story of India becoming a defense powerhouse as it gets on to be a developed country. Thank you very much for being very patient. Thank you.